When earth and palace crack and fall, when a silver tongue brings doom burning bright, hope lies amidst the broken fragments, in the lost city of night. Find the tale of the brother lost. Find the sword from on high. Or else let darkness swallow the world and bring down the sky.
Foeslayer's joints ached where they had remained in a fixed position for so long. But she did not acknowledge it, did not shift. Years of training had desensitized her to bodily complaints. The night air was heavy in her lungs. The heat of midsummer, even at midnight, was stifling along her scales. It was background noise in her brain, not worth her focus. She instilled those same thoughts into her own soldiers. Let the civilians worry about the mundane, she instructed. Rise above it. Instead, her gaze stayed on the moons, all three of them not quite so full now. Their reflections shimmered on the choppy sea. Waves smashed their ferocity upon the cliff base, reverberating up 200 feet of stone to tremble under Foeslayer's talons. Still, she remained immovable. It was time to face her failure with pride. She'd had one chance to prove herself. Despite the failings of her birth, she'd been given an opportunity to realize all her dreams, her tribe's dreams. Yet even that had been soured by forces beyond her control. Truly, that was the story of her life, it seemed. She would do everything in her power to achieve her life's ambitions, only for things she couldn't account for to ruin it all. Her lack of powers, her love for Arctic, the hatred of his mother, her defective dragonettes. And now, the entire mission was at risk. So why didn't she care? It almost felt treasonous to care more for the tiny dragonette she had brought into the world just the other night, rather than the whole purpose for her existence. Yet there was no denying it. Even now, a part of her usually focused mind was splintered and worried. It was a foreign feeling, and she shouldn't like it. Her mother paced the cliff edge in front of her. Every now and then, a spray of sea air would blast up and sweep beneath Prudence's wings to hit Foeslaayer in the face. It was as if the kingdom itself was scolding her. Prudence lashed her tail, talons dug into the ground. She overlooked the sea, dark and churning with the promise of an incoming storm. Foeslaayer remained at attention, her face impassive.
You have no idea the hurdles I had to jump through for you. We came this close to ending it. Years' worth of work, almost for nothing.
Foeslaayer schooled her features so that she wouldn't wince.
But it's done now. We can salvage this. Plans are already underway to accommodate a new strategy.
Relief made Foeslayer's tired muscles want to slacken, until her mother's next words nearly broke her.
The dragonettes will be taken to our facility further south. There we can test them to see which holds more value.
No.
Prudence froze. Stiffly, she swiveled her head to glare at Foeslaayer.
As the head of this program, you do not defy me.
They're my dragonettes. You can't take them.
It felt like the words were dragged up from the bottom of her spine. Every day of her life, every rule she'd ever memorized, every moment of training and conditioning told her to never question orders, never talk back. The program is everything. But these words would not be silenced, as if her hatchlings had put them in her heart as a keepsake when their eggs had left her body.
This is for the sake of everything we've been working towards. It is clear to everyone that you are compromised.
But Mother,
Commander, I see I should have made that distinction clearer when you were growing up.
Commander, I am part of this program too. I am the best of what Nightwing has to offer.
You have no powers.
The cold words aggravated a wound that had been with Foeslaayer since the day she hatched on a moonless night. Her first impulse was to get angry, but it was what Prudence wanted.
I am the greatest warrior in our army. I am captain of the aerial defense. The genes of the best Nightwings in our history run through me. The program is everything to me. I can train them. You know I can.
I knew you could seduce the Icewing as ordered, but that went awry, didn't it? Who's to say your feelings won't cloud your judgment this time as well?
Because I know if I fail, my dragonettes are forfeit. And you can rely on how I would do anything to not let that happen.
For the first time in her life, Foeslaayer raised her head so that she stood taller than her mother.
And you need me. If either of them are what you want, then you will need Arctic's help. And we both know he won't do it for you.
Prudence glared. Foeslaayer held herself still and stared back. She hoped her mother couldn't see her tail tip twitching. Not for the first time, Foeslaayer caught herself wishing that she and Arctic had fled across the sea, as they had intended. But once again, fate had snatched away Foeslayer's dreams.
Very well. You may keep your dragonettes if you are determined to suffer this way.
I am.
And there would be suffering. Prudence would make sure of it. It might mean Foeslaayer would always be watching for spies, ready to report any weakness. It would mean she would have to be a tougher mother than she wanted to be. It might break her not to be able to sweep her perfect dragonettes into her wings and shower them with love. But it would be worth it, Foeslaayer told herself. Anything for her dragonettes. They were going to change the world. The roof broke beneath him. Slate tiles and bricks ripped off under the impact. Beams shattered and furniture crumpled to splinters. Fathom choked, winded. Dust clogged his nose. Smoke from the fires across the city burned his lungs. He lay in the crevice his fall had punched through the building. His entire body cried out with the throbbing heat of pain, his green hide already mottled and bruising. Was something broken? It was hard to tell when everything hurt equally. Cuts and lacerations striped his body with streaks of red, as if he were trying to imitate a rainwing. Yet through the pain, he was aware of some instinct yelling at him, urging him.
Get up. Get up now. He's coming.
But he was too tired. He kept this up for what felt like hours. Were they safe? Had they managed to get away? For years he'd believed his power was a curse, no good to help anyone. And yet he'd saved an entire tribe, but at the cost of a brother. His heart hurt more than anything else. A shadow fell over the hole in the roof above him, and there he was, Darkstalker, in all his glossy, huge glory. Fathom had never given much thought to the overly large wings, the long coils of his body, or the exaggerated curling talons. Now they all screamed of danger, a testament of how he'd been born to kill, a warning Fathom had been too stupid to notice. And yet, when Darkstalker smiled, even in that deranged way, where it looked like he painted a smile on his face to hide the agony in his burning bright eyes. Fathom felt a pang of grief. This was his best friend, and they were driven to murder each other.
Oh, Fathom. Poor, ridiculous Fathom. Look at your mess. Quite inconsiderate of you. You know, I'm going to have to be the one to clean it up later.
He moved down from the lip of the hole to the floor Fathom had crashed in. Even when he moved, it was with the constant grace of a snake's sliver. Of course, his scales bore no evidence of their battle. Not even when they fought in the storm clouds overhead, and Fathom had hit Darkstalker with a bolt of lightning. It hadn't left a scratch. Though his scales were invulnerable, Darkstalker had still felt the pain, and that was when he had thrown Fathom across the city into the crater he now lay in. It was another reminder that Darkstalker was now beyond any mortal means of containing him. He'd gone the ultimate step. There would be no stopping him, for nothing could kill him. He was immortal. That realization, hitting Fathom with the weight of a whale, was enough to nearly make him lose all hope. But Clearsight had to be right. He just had to hold on a little longer.
I didn't want it to be this way.
His usual grin slipped, and Fathom thought he saw a real anguish flitter through his silver blue eyes. But just as quickly, the Nightwing blinked, and his mask returned. It was a terrible mask indeed, one that showed him smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. Each tooth became exaggerated with a cold fury that consumed all of him.
I had everything planned out. I could have made this tribe great, my destiny fulfilled. And then you and Clearsight had to ruin it.
You ruined it yourself.
He tried to drag himself back from his friend.
No.
He stopped. One of his legs was definitely broken. Darkstalker noticed. Whether he read the pain in Fathom's mind, or he saw the way his friend flinched, the former Sea-Wing Prince knew not. Again, something shifted underneath his facade. Concern? Opportunity?
Oh, by all the snakes. I can't stay mad at you while you're bleeding all over the floor.
He reached out towards Fathom's leg, but he recoiled with a fearful hiss.
Don't touch me.
The Nightwing drew back his talons and had the gall to look offended.
Fathom, don't be dense. Let me fix it.
No.
Despite the pain, Fathom pulled himself further back.
I don't want any hidden strings.
Darkstalker at least had the decency to quickly glance away. He knew what Fathom was thinking, how he knew of Darkstalker's little fixes, and what they entailed.
It was never needless. Everything I did was for the good of—
It was for the good of you. What you've done, it's unjustifiable. I could never.
He trailed off, as the throbbing pain became too much. Darkstalker curled his lip.
You see, this is the fundamental difference between you and I, Fathom.
He gave a flourish of his talons towards his once friend's injury, as if that perfectly demonstrated his point.
You would rather linger in unnecessary pain. I, on the other talon, have the spine to do something about a situation I can clearly fix.
The difference between us is that you are a liar, and a
Murderer?
Darkstalker finished the words Fathom felt too sick to utter. All his charisma was gone, his usual wall of calm now rubble, his raw emotions bare for all to see.
They deserved it! After everything they'd done, they needed to be punished!
Do I need to be punished that way?
Fathom nearly vomited on the words. Flashes of Arctic, of Queen Vigilance, their bodies. The images filled him with a new kind of horror every time he remembered. Darkstalker frowned, as if wounded.
I called you brother, Fathom!
Fathom looked down significantly at his leg, at the claw wounds along his hide that matched the blood on Darkstalker's talons. He blinked back tears.
Then I can see what that means to you.
No! You don't get to judge me! I never wanted this! You broke your sacred oath! You swore that you would never use your powers! But you did! To try and destroy me? You struck first! Sea-Wing!
Because you are hurting dragons. Your tribe, you are terrifying them.
Insurrection was bound to happen unless I showed them true strength. Now the flock will fall in line, and I will lead them, as I was born to do.
And I can't let you do that.
Something in his eerie gaze shifted, like he was finally accepting that Fathom wouldn't surrender. As if they were still dragonettes roughhousing around their bedroom. That their animus battle that had rocked the sky was just another playful argument over who won the right to the first dibs at the table. That Darkstalker would eventually win and Fathom would concede and go back to sticking to his side. But now, the Nightwing finally accepted that those days were gone. That the ocean between him and Fathom was too wide and tumultuous for even him to surpass. Fathom's ultimate refusal to join him on his side of the shore had driven a spear into his heart and destroyed whatever bond had remained there. His eyes met Fathom's. There was a coldness there that was so alien to the Sea-Wing that it made him tremble. Hate. Darkstalker had been mad plenty of times, but not once in his life had he looked upon Fathom with such unbridled hate before.
I thought you would help me build our glorious future, but now I see you can't be trusted.
Red-stained talons reached out towards Fathom's face. His heart pounded, but he couldn't move. Memories, as clear as the day they happened, spun across his brain. Of every time they laughed, of the first time Darkstalker had called him brother. When they took that fishing trip. When he, Darkstalker and Clearsight had stood on a seaside cliff and dreamed of their happy future. Unbidden, tears slid down Fathom's cheeks. Darkstalker hesitated as he saw those memories too in Fathom's mind, as he saw the tear crawl down his friend's face. His expression grew torn. Hope hit Fathom so hard it hurt. Darkstalker knew what he needed to do, but he didn't want to. For a moment, he didn't look like the power-hungry, mad animus he had turned out to be. Instead, he looked like the dragonette he had been when they met, hopeful and desperate for a friend. Behind Darkstalker, through the hole in the ceiling, Fathom caught a glimpse of the sun through the storm clouds. It had just crested the tip of a gate mountain on the eastern horizon.
Send him to me when the sun reaches the top of the mountain. That should give me enough time, and the tribe will be far away by then.
Those had been the instructions Clearsight had given him. Now, the time had come. Fathom snatched up a jagged shard of a tile. It cut between his talons and smeared them with his own blood. With a cry, he lunged for Darkstalker and thrust it to his friend's breast. Darkstalker's icy blue eyes met Fathom's deep, tear-filled green. Neither of them moved.
Send him to Clearsight!
Reality shifted and contorted. Air became heavy and congealed. Fathom wanted to scream as it felt like his guts were being pulled out through his belly. And then there was a bright flash and a clap of thunder. And Darkstalker was gone. Fathom lay in the rubble, alone, and let the hurt come in. That was it. If the plan worked, that would be the last time he would see his friend again. If it didn't, well, either way it was all over. Both the nightmare and the beautiful, wonderful dream. All because he had let it happen, just like he had with Albatross. Fathom curled up on the floor, covered his head with his wing, and wept. The world was never going to be the same again. The tribe usually worked on a rotation when it came to hunting. Obviously, those with more vital roles got to eat more often, And as the key to the tribe's future, Morrowseer had been granted privileges that allowed him to eat when he felt like it. And as would be expected, those same privileges extended to his mate, Secretkeeper. In the 12 years they had been married, she had only used this advantage sparingly. She had a good head on her shoulders most of the time, and was not foolish enough to pass up the opportunity. Yet Morrowseer had recently become aware that Secretkeeper had been making use of this benefit more and more often. He tried to ask her why, but of course she brushed it aside. He didn't want to think the worst of her, he tried to reason with himself. Since he delivered the prophecy, since putting in place the plan that would save their tribe, he had been distant with her. Missions to the mainland, council meetings late into the night, he had buried himself in his work. Could he blame Secretkeeper if she looked for affection in the wings of another? No, a rational side of his brain mused. But she was still his wife, and this kind of disloyalty would not be tolerated. Who was more worthy of her than he? He was second in command of the tribe in all but name. He intended to follow her on one of her little outings. She always waited until the dead of night, when the rest of the tribe slept, when he would be in talks with the queen. The perfect time to slip away. As she soared for the tunnel to the rainforest, Morrowseer followed at a distance. He intended to catch her with her lover, to see who it was that she dared to betray him for. But for all his intentions, that was not what happened. Deep into the rainforest he followed. As he came out of the secret tunnel, the first lungful of clean, rich air, not tainted by ash and smoke, was enough to make lesser dragons stumble. But he carried on. It was only another reminder of what he was fighting for. Were it not for his keen sense of smell, he might have lost Secretkeeper to the darkness of the forest floor. In the thickest bush, in the shadow of a fallen hollowed-out tree, he found a little den. What looked more like a nest folded from ferns. A dragon nest. A memory came to mind, of Secretkeeper returning from a hunting expedition 3 years ago. She said the egg came out cracked, the dragonet inside already dead. She had begged him then that they would not try again.
I can't take it anymore. I'll die for this feather.
They had been trying for years. 4 times they'd tried, and 4 times they'd failed. It was one of the reasons Morrowseer was so adamant about saving their tribe, at any cost. They had to get away from the volcano. When they did, he and Secretkeeper could have hope again. The tribe could have hope again. Seeing the nest, Morrowseer felt a swift slash of shame. Secretkeeper must be coming to mourn still. He too had mourned, in his own way. That was why he'd furiously driven himself into his work, why he'd been so distant with her. But he'd never considered coming to see the site where it might have happened, where Clearsight might have enshrined their last lost dragonets. Movement rustled in the undergrowth across the clearing. In the moonlight hopped a tiny dragonet. She was perhaps 2, well-fed, healthy. Her scales a shimmering ebony black. Silver scales sparkled at the corners of her green eyes, bright and dazzling. The dragonet had wandered into the clearing and had looked to the moons eagerly, but upon spotting him had frozen. He stared at her. She stared back.
Moonwatcher! Moonwatcher? Moon, dear, you shouldn't.
Secretkeeper came through the trees a second later, but the moment she saw her husband, she stilled and looked at him with horror. Morrowseer couldn't breathe. He stared at his mate, then at the dragonet. 2 years old had been his guess. If their last egg had lived, it would be the right age. Rage blinded him.
How could you?
To her credit, she didn't try to placate him.
I couldn't take her back. The volcano would have destroyed her.
And I didn't have a right to know? Isn't she mine too?
You would have returned her to the tribe.
Secretkeeper scooped up the petrified dragonette in her talons and brought her close to herself, protecting the little one in her shadow.
Look at her, Morrowseer. She's perfect. She's healthy. Everything every other Nightwing dragonette is not. If putting our daughter first meant you couldn't know, I can live with that.
If she had struck him, he wouldn't have been more surprised.
And what of the risks? To the tribe? To our plan? Did you not even consider the consequences had this been discovered? You could have ruined everything!
I don't care!
Her voice echoed into the trees with grim finality. Morrowseer's teeth ground together.
You don't care?
My dragonette is all that matters to me. If you want to be a part of that, make your choice.
Soft earth shredded beneath his clenched talons. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. A knife had sliced open his back. His mate had not only betrayed him, their entire marriage, with this unforgivable secret. She had betrayed the entire tribe. She brought shame down on both of them. What if their dragonette was contaminated? Yes, she was alive. Yes, she was healthy. And part of Morrowseer wanted to get closer, to look at his daughter, and hold her in his talons, to know she was real. But he couldn't ignore that her very existence was a slap in the face. His mate did not value the cohesion of the tribe enough to follow tradition. His mate did not value his feelings enough to tell him that his child had lived. Instead, she had lied to him, made him grieve another stillbirth, and robbed him of the chance to be a father. For all that, he loved and hated them both. But now the question remained on what to do with them. Secretkeeper was right. He had to make a choice. And to him, the choice was clear. They needed to return to the island. The laws existed for a reason, and Secretkeeper must be judged for them. And this dragonette needed to be with her own kind, to correct any weaknesses that might have been instilled in her by being raised out here. What if... The dragonette suddenly screeched. She tried to reach further into her mother's shadow, trying to hide in her wings. She stared at Morrowseer with wide, terrified eyes.
He can't! Moon!
Secretkeeper hurriedly tried to quieten her daughter, her voice filled with a little more panic than was strictly necessary.
Moon, hush! Don't!
He'll take us back! I saw it! He's gonna take us back! Don't let him!
I saw it.
Morrowseer inspected this little creature, with her big, frightened green eyes and those strange silver scales that glittered in the moonlight. Her stare was so intense on Morrowseer's gaze, like she could look through him. She'd somehow managed to know his intentions.
I saw it.
Quickly, Morrowseer conjured something very specific into his mind. Of Battlewinner stood before the little dragonette, vast and reaching for her. The reaction was instantaneous.
Mother! Her tongue is blue! She's gonna take me away!
Morrowseer glared at Secretkeeper's defeated expression. She'd already known about this. There was no way either of them could avoid this now. This would change everything.